I want you to picture a scene for me. It is 1925. We are in Cambridge, England.
Okay.
It is raining, because let's be honest, it is usually raining in Cambridge. And a man named Ronald Fisher is sitting at a desk staring at a problem that, quite frankly, sounds like the most boring thing in the world.
I know exactly where you were going with this, and you are right. If you looked over his shoulder at that moment, you would see a manuscript destined for the proceedings of the Cambridge Philosophical Society.
Sounds absolutely thrilling.
It was dry. It was incredibly technical. Fisher was a geneticist and, a statistician, and he was wrestling with his problem about estimation.
Estimation.
Basically, if you have a pile of messy, noisy data like crop yields from a farm, or height measurements, or rainfall data, how do you squeeze the absolute maximum amount of truth out of it?
Right. Okay. So he is trying to find the signal that's hidden inside all the noise.
Exactly. And to solve this, he invents a formula, a matrix to be precise. He needed a way to quantify how much knowledge is sitting inside a data set.
To put a number on it.
And being a modest guy, he just calls this quantity the information.
Which we now call Fisher information.
Correct. But here's the thing. Fisher thought he was building a tool for agriculture. He thought he was helping people breed better corn or understand how traits are inherited in, fruit flies.
Sure, a practical tool for a practical problem.
He had no idea, absolutely no idea, that he had just written down a piece of source code that runs the universe.
And that is why we are here today. Because 99 years later, that formula Fisher information has escaped. It has jumped the fence.
Jumped the fence is putting it mildly. It is more like a contagion. It's everywhere.
We are finding it in quantum mechanics, where it apparently dictates the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. It is showing up in evolutionary biology, controlling how fast species can adapt. It is in thermodynamics. It is in geometry. And the deeper we look, the more it looks like this isn't just an analogy.
No, it is definitely not a coincidence. When you see the exact same mathematical structure, the same bounds, the same matrix appearing in fields that shouldn't talk to each other, that is a smoking gun.
That is the mystery we are diving into. We are calling this deep dive Fisher's Ghost.
I like that.
We are going to investigate how a statistics formula from the 1920s became a candidate for a fundamental law of physics. And we are going to look at a very specific, slightly spooky possibility that this formula keeps showing up because it is measuring the texture of reality itself.
I love this topic.
Yeah.
It forces us to ask if the boundaries we draw between biology, physics, and statistics are actually real, or if we are just looking at the same elephant from different angles.
So buckle up. We have a lot of ground to cover. We have got the hard science, the tier 1 stuff that's absolutely solid. We have got some mind-bending geometry. And by the end, we're going to get into some serious conjecture about the dimensions of the universe.
Let's get started.
Act 1. The bound. We need to start with the bedrock. We need to understand what Fisher was actually trying to do. What exactly is this estimation game?
Okay, to understand this, you have to throw away the idea that you can ever know anything with 100% certainty. In science, we rarely observe truth. We observe data.
Give me a concrete example.
Imagine you are holding a coin. But this isn't a normal coin. I have tampered with it. It might be fair 50 heads and tails, but it might be weighted to land on heads 60% of the time, or 70.
Okay, so there is a hidden parameter. That percentage, let's call it the bias.
Right. The bias is the truth, but you can't see the bias. You can't just look at the metal and read 0.6. The only way you can learn about it is to flip the coin.
So I flip it. Heads, heads, tails, heads.
That is your data. It is noisy. It is random. If you flip it 4 times and get 3 heads, does that mean the bias is 75%? Or did you just get lucky with a perfectly fair coin?
Hard to tell with only 4 flips. I mean, you'd need a lot more.
Exactly. Fisher's question was, is there a limit to how well you can figure this out? If you have n number of flips, how close can you get to the true bias? And to answer that, he developed this concept of Fisher information.
How do you define that simply? I mean, what is it?
Think of it as sensitivity. Imagine a dial that controls the bias of the coin. If I turn that dial just a tiny fraction, say, from 0.50 to 0.51, does the data change?
For a coin flip, probably not much. The results would look almost the same.
Right. It is a subtle change. The data is not very sensitive to that parameter.
Yeah.
So it has low Fisher information. But imagine a different experiment. Imagine a super-sensitive radar system tracking a satellite.
Yeah.
If I move the satellite 1 millimeter, the radar signal jumps wildly. that system has high Fisher information.
Okay, I see. So if the data is super sensitive to the hidden parameter, you have high information. The truth is shouting at you through the data.
Yes, a perfect way to put it. And if the data doesn't change much when you tweak the parameter, you have low Fisher information. The truth is whispering, or it is completely drowned out by the noise.
So Fisher information is a score. It tells you how loud the signal is in your data.
It was a score for about 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
a very useful metric for statisticians, but just a score. But then, in the mid-1940s, things got serious.
How so?
Two mathematicians, Harold Cramér in Sweden and Cramér-Rao in India, independently looked at Fisher's score and realized it wasn't just a score, it was a wall, a fundamental limit.
This is the famous Cramér-Rao bound.
The Cramér-Rao bound, and for everyone listening, that's pronounced Cramér and Rao. This is one of the most important theorems in data science, and as we will see, in physics.
Yeah, so what did they prove?
They proved that the variance, which is essentially the error, the uncertainty of your estimate of any unbiased estimate you make, has a hard lower limit. You can't get an error smaller than this limit.
And that limit is?
The limit is 1 divided by the Fisher information, 1 over I.
1 over the information. So if information is high, the error can be low.
Correct. But if information is low, your error must be high. And notice I said must. This isn't about how smart you are. It is not about how fast your computer is.
It's not a technological problem.
It is not a technological limit at all. You could have a brain the size of a planet. You could run a simulation for 1 billion years, and you still cannot violate the Cramér-Rao bound.
It is a speed limit on knowledge.
It is exactly a speed limit on knowledge. It says, "Thou shalt not know the truth more precisely than the noise allows." The information of the data itself sets the boundary.
That feels restrictive. We are so used to thinking that if we just get better technology, we can measure anything with perfect precision.
And we can improve the technology to increase the Fisher information in the first place.
Yeah.
We could build better sensors that collect better data. But once the data is collected, you are logged in. The bound is absolute.
And the scary part you said is that it applies to everything.
Everything.
Like really everything.
Everything. Estimating the bias of a coin, a radar system tracking a missile, an astronomer estimating the distance to a black hole, a hedge fund trying to estimate the volatility of a stock.
The math doesn't care.
The math doesn't care what the parameter is. If you are estimating a hidden variable from noisy data, Cramér-Rao is watching you. It is the law.
That universality is the first big clue, isn't it? If the same rule applies to stock markets and black holes, it implies the rule isn't about stocks or stars.
Exactly.
It is about the nature of information itself.
Precisely. It suggests that there is a geometry to information.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the next layer of the onion, the information geometry.
Okay, geometry implies shapes, curves, distances. But we were talking about probability distributions, like the coin flip. How does a probability have a shape?
This is where we have to thank Shunichi Amari, a Japanese mathematician who really blew this field open in the 1980s. Amari said, "Stop thinking of probabilities as just lists of numbers. Think of them as points on a map."
A map. Walk me through that.
Imagine a landscape, a rolling curved surface. Every single point on that surface represents a different state of reality. So one point might be a fair coin, 50-50.
Okay.
A point right next to it might be a slightly biased coin, say 51-49. Another point far away could be a two-headed coin.
Yeah, so we have a landscape of all possible coins, a coinscape.
A coinscape, sure.
Mm.
Now, in regular geometry, like on a flat piece of paper, the distance between 2 points is just a straight line, right? The Pythagorean theorem.
Right.
But on this probability map, this statistical manifold, the surface is curved. It is warped
Warped by what?
by Fisher information.
Ah. So Fisher information isn't just a score. It is the ruler. It defines the very concept of distance in the space.
It is the metric tensor. That is the technical term. It defines the distance between two probabilities. So if two states are easy to tell apart, if they have high Fisher information between them, they are far away on the map.
Because it doesn't take much data to see the difference.
Exactly. But if they are hard to distinguish, if they have low Fisher information, they are close together on the map. It takes a huge amount of data to tell them apart.
This is starting to sound eerily like general relativity. Gravity warps space-time. Information warps probability space.
The math is shockingly similar. It is Riemannian geometry. But here is the wow moment, the thing that really keeps me up at night.
I'm ready.
In 1972, a Russian mathematician named Nikolai Chentsov, pronounced Chentsov, asked a really profound question. He asked, Is there any other ruler we could use?
Like, could we invent a Smith information or a Doe information to measure these distances? Is Fisher's way just one of many?
Exactly. And he proved a theorem that, frankly, shouldn't be possible. He proved that Fisher information is unique.
Unique, as in the only one.
The only one. He proved that if you want a geometry that makes sense, specifically one that is invariant under what are called sufficient statistics, then Fisher information is the only solution. There is no other option.
Wait, hold on. You have to define sufficient statistics for me.
Okay. Imagine I flip that coin 3 times. Heads, tails, heads. That's the raw data.
Got it.
Now, if I tell you I got 2 heads and 1 tail, have I lost any information that's relevant for figuring out the coin's bias?
No. The order doesn't matter for the bias, just the final count.
Right. The count of heads and tails is a sufficient statistic. You have compressed the data, but you haven't lost the signal about the bias. Chentsov argued that the distance between 2 probabilities shouldn't change just because you summarized the data in an intelligent way.
That makes perfect intuitive sense. The reality hasn't changed just because I summarized my notes. The coins are still the same distance apart on your map.
Well, Chentsov proved that Fisher information is the only metric that respects that rule. There is no other formula in the infinite library of mathematics that works.
That's eerie.
It is incredibly eerie. It means Fisher didn't just invent a handy tool in 1925. He stumbled onto a fundamental structural component of logic itself. Nature didn't have a choice. If nature wanted probability to have a geometry, it had to use Fisher information.
It is like finding a buried monolith. It was always there, waiting to be discovered, not invented.
And because it is the bedrock, it supports everything else. Which is why, when physicists started digging into quantum mechanics, they hit the exact same layer of rock.
Let's talk about quantum mechanics, because usually when people try to connect statistics to quantum physics, it gets very woo-woo, very fast.
We are going to stay strictly on the math. No quantum healing here. This is all rigorous.
Good. So we have the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Even people who don't know physics have heard of this one. You cannot measure a particle's position and its momentum perfectly at the same time.
Right. The classic delta x times delta p is greater than or equal to h bar over 2. It is usually taught as a postulate, a fundamental rule you just have to accept, like gravity pulls down.
But you are saying it is not a rule.
It is not a primary rule. In 1994, 2 physicists, Bronstein and Caves, published a landmark paper that turned this on its head. They treated a quantum state as what it is, a probability distribution.
A distribution of where the particle might be or what its momentum might be?
Exactly. And they asked, what happens if we apply the Cramér-Rao bound to it?
They applied the coin flip logic to electrons.
Yes. They calculated the quantum Fisher information for measuring position and for measuring momentum. And when they plugged those values into the Cramér-Rao inequality, out popped the Heisenberg uncertainty principle.
Wait, just like that. So Heisenberg isn't some mystical fuzziness of the universe. It is just the Cramér-Rao bound in a quantum disguise.
Exactly. The fuzziness of quantum mechanics is actually an information limit. You cannot distinguish 2 quantum states that are too close together in this information geometry we were talking about. The uncertainty principle is just the mathematical statement that you cannot extract infinite information from a finite system.
That demystifies it, but it also makes it so much more profound. It means quantum mechanics is, at its absolute core, a theory about information.
And this isn't just theory. This has real-world consequences right now. You've heard of LIGO, right? The gravitational wave detector.
Of course, the giant lasers that detect ripples in space-time from colliding black holes.
Yes. They are measuring changes in distance that are smaller than a proton. To do that, they are constantly bumping up against the limits of quantum noise. They are literally in a fist fight with the Cramér-Rao bound every single day.
How do they win? Or how do they get close to the limit?
They use all sorts of tricks, like squeezed light. But the ultimate trick is entanglement. And this leads us to the field of quantum metrology.
Metrology, the science of measurement.
Right. If you use independent particles, like throwing 100 separate coins or firing 100 separate photons, your precision improves by the square root of n. So if you want to double your precision, you need 4 times as many particles. It's an inefficient, losing game.
That is the classical limit, the standard quantum limit.
But, and this is the magic, if you entangle those particles, if you link their quantum states so they act like a single coherent system, a choir singing one note, the quantum Fisher information explodes. It scales with n squared, not n.
So the precision gets way better, way faster.
It's called the Heisenberg limit, and it's a quadratic improvement. It's the difference between taking 1,000,000 measurements and taking 1,000. And it's only possible because we understand the Fisher information of the system. We are literally engineering sensors that hack the information bounds of the universe.
So let's pause for a second and just take stock. We started with a guy analyzing wheat yields in the 1920s. We moved to a geometric map of all possible probabilities, a map that nature had no choice but to use. And now we are building quantum sensors based on the same formula to listen to black holes colliding at the edge of the universe.
And we haven't even talked about the biology yet.
Right, because while Fisher was revolutionizing statistics, he was also moonlighting. He had a whole other career going on.
He did. This leads us to Act 2, the theorem.
Act 2.
R.A. Fisher wasn't just the father of modern statistics. He is also considered by many to be the greatest biologist since Darwin.
Talk about overachieving. That's just not fair.
In 1930, just 5 years after the information paper, he wrote a book called The Genetical Theory of Natural Selection. It is the Bible of evolutionary genetics. And in it, he proposed what he called the fundamental theorem of natural selection.
He called it fundamental. He was not a shy man.
No, he was not.
Yeah.
He explicitly compared it to the second law of thermodynamics. He thought it was the universal law of life. And the theorem states, the rate of increase in fitness of any organism at any time is equal to its genetic variance in fitness at that time.
Okay, let's unpack that. Rate of increase equals variance.
Think of variance as variety, diversity. If you have a population of bacteria where everyone is a perfect clone zero variance, then evolution can't do anything. There's no variation to select from.
Right. If a new antibiotic comes along, everyone lives or everyone dies together. There's no adaptation.
But if you have high variance, lots of different traits, different strengths and weaknesses floating around in the gene, natural selection has raw material. It can pick the winners and discard the losers very rapidly. So the speed of evolution is determined by the amount of variation.
That sounds pretty intuitive, but I know this theorem was wildly controversial. Why?
It was hated for decades because people interpreted rate of increase in fitness to mean that populations always get better, that fitness always goes up, marching towards perfection.
But we know that is not true. Environments get worse. Asteroids hit. New viruses appear. Fitness can crash spectacularly.
They thought Fisher was being hopelessly naive. But Fisher was a very, very precise thinker. He wasn't talking about the total change in fitness. He was talking strictly and only about the component of change due to natural selection.
So the environment might be dragging the population's average fitness down by 10 points, but natural selection, working with the existing variants, is simultaneously pushing it up by 5 points. Fisher is only measuring that 5-point push.
Exactly. It's the part of the change that is adaptive. And here is where the ghost comes back. For 80 years, this was just a theorem in biology. And then in 2009, a researcher named Stephen Frank connected the dots.
What did he find?
He looked at Fisher's 1930 biology theorem and Fisher's 1925 statistics formula, and he realized they are the same equation.
Yeah. The genetic variance in the biology theorem is Fisher information.
Mathematically, yes. Frank showed that you could view natural selection as an information extraction process. It's the same math.
Explain that. How is evolution extracting information?
Think of the environment as the hidden parameter. It's complex, it's changing, it contains the truth about what it takes to survive right here, right now.
And the population is the data, the thing trying to estimate the parameter.
The population is the estimator. The genome is the model. Every time an organism lives or dies, that is a data point. This gene didn't work in this context. That gene worked really well. Evolution is an algorithm that updates the genome based on that stream of data from the environment.
That is a wild way to think about life. A species isn't just surviving, it is computing. It's an information processing machine.
It is learning. When a population of moths in England became darker to match the soot-covered trees during the Industrial Revolution, it was literally increasing its Fisher information about the color of the tree bark. It was extracting information from the environment and encoding it directly into its DNA.
So the Cramér-Rao bound, the speed limit, applies to evolution too.
Yes, absolutely. Evolution has a speed limit. A population can only adapt as fast as the information flow allows. You cannot evolve faster than the Fisher information limit set by your genetic variants.
That connects three massive pillars: statistics, quantum physics, biology. They're all governed by the same information bottleneck. It's the same ghost in three different machines.
And to close the loop on this, on the really established science, we have to bring in thermodynamics. Because information, it turns out, isn't free.
This is Landauer's principle.
Rolf Landauer, working at IBM in 1961, he asked a very simple question. Does thinking generate heat? Does processing information have a physical cost?
And the answer is yes.
A resounding yes. He proved that erasing information, the irreversible act of resetting a bit from a 1 to a 0, must release a minimum amount of heat into the environment. Specifically, kT times the natural log of 2.
Which means information is physical. It is not just some abstract mathematical concept. It is tied to energy and entropy.
And this isn't just a thought experiment. It was confirmed experimentally in 2012 by Beirut and his colleagues. So look at the triangle we have built. Fisher information limits precision via Cramér-Rao. It drives the speed of evolution via Fisher's fundamental theorem. And Landauer tells us that processing that information costs energy.
It is a unified economy of reality. Accuracy, survival, and energy. You cannot touch one without pulling on the other two.
And poor Fisher, back in 1925, just wanted to analyze crop data. He had no idea he was writing down the Rosetta Stone for this entire economy.
So we have established that this formula is everywhere. That is Acts 1 and 2. That is the textbook science, the established facts.
Right. Everything we have said so far is published, peer-reviewed, and mathematically solid. It's Tier 1 stuff.
Now, I want to pivot. We are moving to Act 3, the ghost. And I want to be very clear with you, our listeners here. We are moving from settled science to frontier speculation.
Agreed. Warning flags are up. We are entering the realm of why. We're moving from what we know to what we suspect.
The question is, why is Fisher information everywhere? We have seen the pattern. It's undeniable. Now we want the explanation. And there are two main proposals on the table.
The first one comes from a physicist named Roy Frieden. In 1998, he published a very controversial book called Physics from Fisher Information.
And when you say controversial...
I mean, he swung for the fences. Frieden proposed a principle he called EPI, extreme physical information. He claimed that you can derive all of fundamental physics from a single principle involving Fisher information.
All of it.
Schrodinger's equation for quantum mechanics, Maxwell's equations for electromagnetism, Einstein's equations for gravity, all of it. He argues that every law of physics is just the universe trying to minimize the loss of Fisher information during a measurement process.
That sounds like a theory of everything. If that's true, why isn't this front page news? Why aren't we teaching this in every high school?
Because there are, let's say, some skeletons in the closet. To make the math work, Frieden had to do some creative accounting.
Creative accounting is never good in physics.
No, it is not. He introduces this other term into his equations, something he calls bound information, which he labels J. But he never really defines it consistently. In one chapter, J is 0. In another, it is a constant. In another, it's something else.
It feels ad hoc.
It feels very ad hoc. Like he knew the answer he wanted to get, so he sprinkled in some mathematical magic dust to make sure he arrived there. That makes physicists very uncomfortable.
That is a huge red flag. If you have to force the key to fit the lock, it is probably the wrong key.
The other, even bigger problem is coordinate invariance. A fundamental law of the universe shouldn't care if I decide to measure in inches instead of centimeters, or Cartesian coordinates instead of polar coordinates.
Right.
But Fisher information does change depending on your coordinate system. It is sensitive to how you hold the ruler. It's not invariant.
Ooh. That is a deal breaker for a fundamental law. Gravity is gravity, whether I use the metric system or the imperial system. It doesn't change.
Exactly. So, for these reasons, most physicists view Frieden's work as a fascinating failure. It highlights the pattern brilliantly, but it doesn't solve the mystery. It's too problematic.
Okay, so Frieden tried to make Fisher information the generator of physics, and it didn't quite work. Let's look at Proposal B. This is something called the dimensional scaling framework, or the DS framework.
This is a newer and, I think, subtler approach. It doesn't claim that Fisher information creates physics. It claims Fisher information is a measuring tool for something else that's even more fundamental.
A measuring tool for what?
For dimension.
Dimension. Like three-dimensional space. The world we live in.
Yes, but also in a more abstract sense. The effective dimensionality of a system. The conjecture, and again I have to stress this is a conjecture, is that the rank of the Fisher information matrix tells you the effective dimension of the system you were looking at.
We need to break that down. Rank of the matrix. What does that mean?
Okay, go back to our bias coin. It had only one hidden parameter we cared about. The bias. So its Fisher matrix is just a simple 1-by-1 number. Its rank is 1. The dimension of the problem is 1.
Simple enough.
Now imagine a box of gas. If you look at it with your naked eye, from a macroscopic perspective, you can measure its temperature, its pressure, and its volume. 3 parameters. The Fisher information matrix for that system would have a rank of 3.
Okay, I'm with you.
But now, let's say you zoom in with a godlike microscope. You can see every single molecule. billions of them. Now you are measuring billions of positions and billions of velocities. The rank of your Fisher matrix explodes to billions. The effective dimension is now enormous.
So the dimension of the system changed because I zoomed in.
The effective dimension changed.
Yeah.
Your ability to distinguish parameters changed. And here's a kicker. There's a rock-solid Tier 1 theorem in information theory called the data processing inequality. It says you can never create information by processing data. You can only lose it or keep it the same.
Meaning, if I take a blurry photograph, I can't run it through Photoshop and magically find details that the lens never captured in the first place.
Exactly. And coarse graining, zooming out, like going from the molecules back to the whole box of gas, is a form of data processing. You are throwing away detail. So mathematically, the Fisher information must decrease or stay the same as you zoom out.
So if Fisher information rank measures dimension, then the effective dimension of a system must decrease as you zoom out.
And that matches what we see in physics all the time. At the quantum scale, things are incredibly complex and high-dimensional. At our human scale, they smooth out and can be described by simple, low-dimensional laws like classical thermodynamics.
So the DS framework suggests that Fisher information is everywhere because dimension is everywhere, and this is just the tool nature uses to measure it.
Exactly. It is not a magic spell that generates the laws of physics. It is just the ruler that nature uses to decide how complex a system is at a given scale. And since Chentsov proved it is the unique ruler, it is the only tool nature has for the job.
That brings it all back to Chentsov's uniqueness theorem. Nature needs to define distance and dimension in probability space. Fisher information is the only way to do it. So, of course, Fisher information appears in every law of physics that deals with measurement and probability.
It is a very compelling and elegant argument. It relies on fewer magic tricks than Frieden's approach. But, and it's a big but, it still needs to be tested.
How do we test it? We are detectives here. We need proof. We need the smoking gun.
The framework proposes a clear test called Gate G1. You take a system where we independently know its dimension like a fractal.
Right, like the cautious snowflake or something. Things with weird fractional dimensions.
Exactly. A fractal might have a dimension of, say, 1.58. It's not 1D, it's not 2D, it's something in between. If we can write down the probability model for that fractal and compute the rank of its Fisher information matrix, and the answer comes out to 1.58.
That would be the smoking gun. That would be incredible evidence that Fisher information is reading the geometry of space itself.
It would be a monumental discovery.
But we haven't done that calculation yet.
It is being worked on. These are very hard calculations. But until then, it remains a Tier 3 conjecture, a beautiful, tantalizing possibility.
We have covered a massive amount of ground. We started with a statistician in a damp office in 1925. We ended up at the boundaries of dimension itself.
It is quite a journey.
So let's do a confidence check for our listeners. I like to categorize things so we know what is real and what is hopeful.
Good idea. Let's sort the facts from the speculation.
Tier 1, the rock. What can we absolutely take to the bank?
Fisher information itself. The Cramér-Rao bound, that speed limit on knowledge. The fact that Fisher information is the unique metric of probability space, thanks to Chentsov. The derivation of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle from quantum Fisher information, and Landauer's principle, the physical cost of information. That is all solid experimental mathematical fact.
Okay. Tier 1, 2, the interpretation. Solid, but with a specific lens.
That is the biology connection, Stephen Frank's paper. The idea that evolution is an information process and that Fisher's fundamental theorem is really about Fisher information. It's widely accepted, it's mathematically sound, but it is a specific way of looking at biology.
And Tier 3, the gamble, the stuff on the edge.
That is the theory of everything stuff, Frieden's EPI, with all its problems, and the DS framework's conjecture that Fisher rank is dimension. These are the beautiful, unproven ideas on the frontier.
So what is the big takeaway? If I am explaining this to someone at a dinner party and I want to sound smart, what do I say?
I would give them 3 points. Number 1, there is a hard mathematical limit on what we can ever know about the world. The Cramér-Rao bound is real, and it applies to everything from flipping coins to studying distant stars. Knowledge isn't free.
Number 2.
Number 2, evolution is a form of computation. Life is just a very slow, very messy process of extracting information from the environment and storing it in DNA. We are all, at our core, information sponges.
And number 3.
Number 3, the ghost is real. The fact that the exact same mathematical formula governs the precision of quantum mechanics and the speed of biological evolution is not a coincidence. It is a sign that we are missing a deeper layer of reality. We don't know exactly what that layer is yet. Maybe it's geometry, maybe it is dimension. But Fisher gave us the first clue back in 1925.
It is amazing to think that R.A. Fisher started this whole snowball rolling just trying to be a good statistician,
Right.
just trying to solve a practical problem.
He planted a seed that grew into a forest that connects almost all of science. And he didn't even know he was doing it. He died long before most of these connections were ever made.
Fisher's ghost is haunting the equations of physics, and it seems like it is not going away anytime soon.
The ghost is patient. It waited 80 years for us to notice the connection in biology. You can wait a little longer for us to figure out the rest.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep flipping coins, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
This has been The Deep Dive.